Okay, so let me tell you a story, but this one's a little different. It's told from the perspective of a house. Yep, the house at 21119 30th Street. And it remembers a very specific time. A time that was all about two-wheeled sleds that brought the family inside a ton of freedom and some absolutely heart-stopping moments of terror. Picture this. It's Christmas morning, 1955, out in San Diego. For two brothers, Randy and Stan, this was it. The day they got the exact gifts they'd been dreaming of. But here's the thing. These weren't just toys. They were about to become their tools for their first real job, the cause of some serious competition, and man, the source of some really hard-earned lessons. So let's start at the very beginning. These weren't just any gifts. They were total game changers. And they didn't just change the brothers' lives, they pretty much gave the entire neighborhood a brand new and very loud soundtrack. Now, when you hear Flexible Flyer, you're probably thinking of a classic snow sled, right? Well, these were kind of their cousins, built for the pavement. Everyone called them Flexies. They were perfectly made for the streets of sunny San Diego, giving kids that same thrill of sledding, but you'd use your arms to steer and your own two legs for power. For Randy, who was 12, and his little brother Stan, who is 9, these things were a revelation. I mean, they figured out pretty quick that they could actually power these things uphill faster than their bikes. And because you're so low to the ground, when you inevitably wiped out, and you were definitely going to wipe out, you just didn't have as far to fall. So, of course, what happens when you have two brothers and two brand new vehicles? You race, constantly. And their personalities were on full display. Randy, the older brother, he was the strategist. He was all about calculating the perfect line through a turn. Stan? Oh, Stan was pure gut instinct. Just point it downhill, build up momentum, and hope for the best. It made their races totally unpredictable and, honestly, a little terrifying to watch. But the Flexies pretty quickly became more than just racing machines. They turned into essential tools for the brothers' first job. And that job introduced them to one of the most unforgettable characters from their entire childhood. Okay, check out this operation. For about 8 years, Randy and Stan ran the neighborhood paper route, twice a week. Now, the rules said no bicycles allowed, but it didn't say anything about Flexies, so technically, they were good to go. They'd mount these boxes on the front, load them up with papers, and plan out the most efficient routes. It was this perfect two-boy delivery machine. But the most important part of the job, of course, was getting paid. And their favorite customer, this elderly guy named Mr. Stotler, he didn't just pay them. He made it into a whole performance. The boys actually learned to time their collection visits to when he was having his weekly card game with his friends, because that's when the real show began.
See, Mr. Stotler had this whole curriculum that he'd created. He'd offer the boys bonus money, but only if they could stand there in his doorway, right in front of all his card-playing buddies, and recite these random lists he challenged them to memorize. It was part test, part performance, and part lesson, all rolled into one.
And what's so amazing is that Randy, even as a kid, he totally got it. He knew this was a different kind of learning. This wasn't a classroom, it was a doorway. The reward wasn't a grade. It was a bonus quarter you earned while a bunch of old guys cheered for you. But for all the fun and responsibility these Flexies brought, there was another side to it. They also delivered these moments of just pure, absolute terror that reminded everyone how fast things can go wrong when you're messing with gravity on the hilly streets of San Diego. The boys had worked out this really slick, really efficient move for getting around the hills. They'd ride on the sidewalk, then pop right off the curb at the end of the block, swing out into the street, and then use the next driveway to hop back onto the sidewalk. Super fast, super thrilling, and, as it turns out, super risky. So one day, Randy is pulling this exact maneuver on 30th Street. He swings off the curb, sails into the street, and he just glances back over his shoulder to check for cars. And what does he see? The massive, gleaming bumper of a city bus. And it's not far away. It's 5 feet behind him. He could hear the brakes squealing, but it was already way, way too late. Randy ended up crashing on the curb and hitting his head, hard. It gave him a concussion, and back in 1955, that meant a house call from the doctor. And for his parents, Betty and Fred, it was just this horrifying reminder of the dangers that came with letting their sons have all this freedom. Now, you'd think that a near miss with a city bus would be the family's most dramatic Flexi story, right? You would be wrong. So wrong. If Randy's accident was a lesson in physics and looking both ways, his younger brother Stan's was a lesson in just unbelievable, physics-defying spectacle. So get this, Stan is bombing down this super steep 2-block hill, and he completely miscalculates his speed at the bottom. He hits the curb at a dead end with so much force that it launches him, not over the wall, not into the wall, but through a 2-foot-high pedestrian slot in a concrete wall. It's a miracle, but somehow he came out the other side with just a few scrapes and one heck of a story. So, wow. After 2 accidents that could have been catastrophic, what's the big takeaway? Let's break down all the lessons that came from all those thousands of miles traveled on those little wheels. You see, the Flexies basically provided a curriculum you could never get in a classroom. The boys learned real-world physics from mastering gravity and momentum on those hills. They learned responsibility from sticking with that paper route for 8 years. They learned business and geography from managing their customers and navigating the neighborhood. And maybe most importantly, they learned about risk assessment the hard way. So what was the real lasting impact of these simple wheeled sleds? Well, when you look back, they were so much more than just a Christmas gift. Just think about that number for a minute. 8 years. That's a huge commitment for a childhood job. And through all of it, the races, the adventures, and thousands of paper deliveries, the Flexies were their faithful, reliable partners. Eventually, of course, the boys grew up. They moved on to cars and bigger things, and the old Flexies were retired. But the education they provided, everything from business sense to the very real consequences of taking risks, that stuff stuck with them. And so did one very specific, very strange skill. Decades later, Randy could still rattle off the alphabet backwards at lightning speed. It was this amazing party trick he learned, not in a school, but in Mr. Stotler's doorway, all for a bonus quarter. And I think that's the perfect way to end this. It just goes to show that some of the best, most lasting education we ever get often comes from the most unexpected places. It kind of makes you wonder, right? Where are those unexpected classrooms in our own lives?